Hello and welcome to the Sussex Studio Experience podcast. I am your host, Professor Zinzi. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I've been working on for a little while now. And I thought since MLB/Major League Baseball announced yesterday that they're going to be including statistics from the Negro Leagues, that it was a good time to dive into the subject and get it going. So, as you know, we begin, if you've been here before, so welcome, first let me say that. And if you've been here before, you understand that we generally begin with a meditation and a non-denominational prayer. So today we're going to begin with our meditation. But I'm just so excited about what happened with the Negro Leagues. And we'll get into it a bit. As you can imagine, there are lots of people that, the usual suspects are angry that the Negro Leagues are going to be included in the statistics for baseball. And I think that it's a small start, a small way of recognizing what the people in the Negro Leagues did for all of those generations when they were not allowed to participate in MLB, right? So we've seen Jackie Robinson and the breaking of the color line. Have we ever really dived into that? I would say I don't think we have. So as a result of that, the people who've never been honored are going, not never, that's hyperbole to say that they've never been honored, but they haven't been honored appropriately. And so I just have so much joy around the Major League Baseball doing the right thing, not specifically because they are greater than what was represented by the Negro Leagues, just that it is about time that some of the greatest players who've ever played this game are being recognized in a certain kind of way. So there was, like I said, a lot of upset created when this announcement was made. And for those of you who have followed baseball or who haven't followed baseball but grew up sort of watching parents watching baseball and talking about these things, I just think it's wonderful, right? So, and when we think about some of these people, there was, like Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige. Josh Gibson never got to play regular baseball. Satchel Paige played until he was 59 years old, and he was great at 59 years old. And so our Duchess, there's an intersection between our Duchess and her uncle, who also played in the Negro Leagues, and I think that's a really great thing to shine a spotlight on. We have been engaged in a kind of trauma over the last few days, and I'm hoping that we can slowly begin to move on from that. I've seen so much of that, and I just feel like it's time to at least begin this process. So I haven't heard from any of you guys in the chat. I'm going to say something. Hello. If you can hear me, can you put a 1 in the chat? Hey, Connie! Thank you for showing up, Connie. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I was going to begin with the meditation and non-denominational prayer, and then we will begin to get into it. So first, I'm going to begin with the meditation. So close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, feeling your body settle. If you can't close your eyes, don't. But try and feel your body settle and follow the air as it goes into your lungs and comes out, okay? Close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, feeling your body settle. Imagine yourself within the Sussex studio, surrounded by vibrant energy and creative possibility. Feel the warmth of the space and the hum of all the squatties around you. Visualize yourself connecting with fellow squatties, sharing ideas, and inspiring one another. Sense the joy of creation flowing through you. guiding your hands and your mind. Allow yourself to fully immerse yourself in this present moment of creative and familial potential. Inhale deeply, absorbing this creative energy, and exhale slowly, releasing any self-doubt, inhibitions, fear, and any other bad feelings that we've been holding on to. Hold on to this feeling of inspiration as we get ready to dive into the podcast. Okay, so next we're going to have a non-denominational prayer. So thank you, great spirits, great God, where minds can connect, collaborate, and flourish. Bless the members of the squad and their loved ones. May this space ignite a spark of creativity in every participant, empowering them to express their unique voice. Grant them the courage to experiment, embrace challenges, and celebrate that great squatty joy. May the connections forged here blossom into long-lasting friendships and collaborative endeavors. Amen. All right, so I'm going to go back to the screen so I can see what you guys are talking about. Let's see, where is that? There we are. So, hello everyone. And if you want to talk about how you're doing before we dive into this, and let me know if you see the image of the Negro League baseball players on the screen right now. Can you put a 1 in the chat if you see, or actually make it a 2. If you see the image on the screen, can you please put a 2 in the chat? Amen. Yes. So I know I've been teasing this for a while, the connection between our Duchess and the Negro Leagues. And, is one ever fully prepared? So I've been preparing to make a longer video around the subject, but I just got so moved and excited about this thing that I just wanted to, thank you, Connie, that I wanted to begin this discussion today and right now regarding the Duchess and her connection to the Negro Leagues. Right. So here is an image on the screen of some Negro League baseball players. And Meghan's uncle played in the Negro Leagues. Meghan's great uncle played in the Negro Leagues. And so the question I'm asking today is, how much did he matter? Was he a GOAT, right? So we will try and figure that out. I have my idea already, right? So mine just quickly goes to an affirmative. And my affirmative stems from, hello everyone, stems from the people that he played with. So when you look at, let me change the slide. So this is Meghan's Aunt Lillie and her uncle, Will Happy Evans. Happy was his nickname, right? And so he was born in 1899 and played, I think it was from 24 to 34. But the people that he played alongside of or give us a clue, give us an indication that he was one of the GOATs of the game. And this is before, like yesterday, as if these players didn't make a difference before Major League Baseball acknowledged it. Because we know that, some of us who've watched baseball know that Jackie Robinson came into the game to help integrate it. And we also know that he wasn't necessarily one of the greatest players, but they needed a certain kind of Negro, if you will, to come into the game and integrate it. They couldn't have people out there who are maybe like maybe me and some of our other squaddies who are a little bit, or can be, most of us can probably be fiery, but they needed a certain temperament. And so Jackie Robinson was chosen to come in because he was seen as safe, right? He wasn't, according to the baseball players, they were like, dude, why is he getting chosen? But this had to be done in a certain kind of way. And we see this done in other institutions, right? People get chosen based on how safe they appear and how well they'll be able to take a lot of crap. So Jackie Robinson, a very learned person, and was seen as a choice that, I mean, he was also an amazing baseball player. And at the same time, he wasn't seen as top 10. So, the baseball players, we'll come back to this photo, right? But that's him as he got older. So these people, Josh Gibson is probably the greatest, between him and Satchel Paige, the greatest baseball players, you know, a lot of people believe, of all time, right? Josh Gibson was a hitter. We've never seen a hitter like him. And for Satchel Paige to pitch up until 59 and be like out there just doing it for the Cleveland Indians, can you imagine like a 59-year-old player out there today competing with the best of the best? I'm not saying that The Rock is 59 because clearly he's not, but you would have to be, you know, that level, on that level of athleticism 10 years from the time, you know, The Rock is now. So I think he's close to 50, if you will. So not only competing, but competing at the top of your game as a pitcher and doing it until age 59. So the Negro Leagues were nothing to mess around with. And if we think about it in today's terms, if you think about what the NBA would look like if they were not integrated, what does that game look like? And that's what baseball looked like. And you can kind of see that today because a lot of African Americans and African descendants have abandoned the game. And I remember when I was a kid seeing an article in Ebony magazine with, I should have looked for it, it just popped in my head though, that said, are there too many blacks in baseball? I don't think we can say that now, right? Because there are very few, but a lot of times the ones that are in there, you can see that they're standouts. So, Satchel Paige playing at a high level up until 59. Josh Gibson, I believe he had brain aneurysm and died relatively young, so that's why he didn't get to come in during that second wave of baseball players. And we all know, I mean, I can't say all, but for those of us, lots of us have an understanding that Jackie Robinson took a lot of crap. If you haven't seen, I was going to say T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of Jackie Robinson, you should check it out. It's beautiful. So every year the baseball players in Major League Baseball all wear his number. I believe it's 42. And I think that's the name of the movie. They all wear 42 for Jackie Robinson Day. And my own kid, he has a Negro Leagues jersey that he wears at the same time. And like when we go places, a lot of older people, they really love to see him in that. And that's a way of me teaching him and helping him connect with people, older people specifically, and also people who are really just like baseball heads, if you will. So anyway, it was a major thing yesterday for Major League Baseball to do this, right? And so we often hear things in the media, or I have, about the Duchess of Sussex not being black enough, if you will. Like there's this whole these wars around skin, and I think it happens in almost every culture. Like people will say you don't have credibility, and so things that have dogged her have to do with that, right? And so my question is, how do you grow up in a home and around these people? He passed away in 86, so she would have been a little kid, you know, seeing her uncle, and a lot of us know people from when we were 4 and they passed away. But her Aunt Lillie lived on, right? So she would have had that influence. She would have grown up hearing conversations about the Negro Leagues. And her Aunt Lillie also, in fact, was the first African American person to have a manager's license in the real estate industry in the state of California. So, and she also grew up in the Baldwin Hills, Windsor Hills, View Park area of California, which is what if you live there or if you've been there, call the Black Beverly Hills. So you have all of these people who, you know, black, mostly African Americans who live and have lived in this space for generations. And I think I talked to you guys about Thurgood Marshall living up the street from my family when I was a kid or when I was young, and selling his home and having like a clause in the contract saying that he wanted children to always live in their home, and like Tom Bradley and other people like that too. So let's see. Connie says her mom is brown and dad is white, so Meghan isn't dark, but 50% of each. Yeah. So if we look at Lily's, and Meghan's aunt's name is Lillie. So when I think about Lillie, I also think, that's the one where the house she lives in, and Doria continues to own that house, right, of Aunt Lillie. So I think that when Lilibet's name was chosen, that it was a kind of double entendre or double homage, if you will. When you say Lillie, and that's her nickname, even though the name is Lilibet, people call her Lillie. We're also saying the name of her mom's favorite aunt, Lillie, who was married to Happy, the baseball player. So you see these people who are thriving. And I remember reading in the press when I was doing research for this program and a larger thing that I want to create, the way they describe Meghan's Aunt Lillie, and like former housekeeper of, well, dude, if he was born in 1899, right, 1899, her husband, and she's born shortly after that, they were not giving African Americans real estate licenses and their parents real estate licenses at that time, specifically if she was the first. And what does that say about a bootstrap story, if you will? There's always allegedly this framing around trying to other and trying to, not just other, but trying to push people down, and still we rise. Because what was the end result? I would say that house right now in that neighborhood is probably valued at somewhere between $2 and $4 million, because that's what the real estate over there sells for. So when I see articles like Meghan straight out of Compton, which is not far because it's LA, right? Nothing's far in New York either, or in most places. London, things aren't far. But they're not that close either, but it is still like a community. So when you say that, you could just say straight out of Beverly Hills. The proximity is not very different between Beverly Hills, Windsor Hills, and any of these spaces. But they chose to frame Meghan as somehow being adjacent to Ice Cube. And of course, you're going to be listening to that music, and you're going to be seeing all kinds of people in your neighborhoods, because we have family reunions and we have cookouts and we get together in large part in these communities with our extended families. So you will be surrounded by, all of these kinds of people. And I think I said that my uncle in LA, he lived across the street from the first architect, Black female architect in California. So that was like, you're surrounded in these neighborhoods by people like that. Tom Bradley was 2 streets over, who was the mayor of Los Angeles for probably a generation. And, like Ray Charles. And so when a lot of African Americans got money, they moved to this space, this Windsor Hills, Baldwin Hills View Park area, because they wanted to have this wonderful real estate, but they also wanted to exist in a space where, there were people like them, because there's protection around that, especially at that time. Everybody, if people look like you, you're going to be targeted a lot less, and your kids can play without having to worry about, them being the only one of this. And so there's this whole thing for any of us who are at least old enough to understand that, right? So anyway, the exciting thing to me has to do with the baseball, like Major League Baseball, and the fact that her uncle played and you see him there, I think, on the bench. Her uncle also played for the Negro Leagues for 10 years. So he was good. And not only that, he played alongside of the arguably 2, 3, 4 of the best baseball players who've ever lived, right? And so her uncle wouldn't be playing in a field in the Negro Leagues with a bunch of scrubs, right? Why would they choose him for their team if he wasn't at a certain level? So that's one of my arguments for why he is likely one of the GOATs, right? So let's move on a bit. How are you guys doing? I feel like, how's everybody doing today? So yeah, that's my argument for why I think that her uncle is likely one of the GOATs of this game, if you will, playing alongside Satchel Paige. So this is what his baseball card would likely look like, right? I found this image. He played for the Homestead Grays, played for few baseball teams, and the Homestead Grays was one of them. And he won the equivalent of Major League Baseball's national championship, right? The World Series, which is what was happening back then. Because how can you not, playing with Josh Gibson, arguably the greatest hitter ever, and Satchel Paige, arguably top 2, top 3. Thank you so much, Connie, for saying that. Baseball, like pitchers who's ever lived, like playing till 59. Come on, like, and so I'm going to say something that you guys can go check out, right? A long time ago, there was a movie, and there's so many of these movies, so I'm going to reference a few of them. But one was called Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars. Have any of you heard of that? Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars? Anybody? Put a 3 in the chat if you've heard of Bingo Long, the movie, and the Traveling All-Stars. No? So, I'll just keep looking to see if anyone has. Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars was about people like Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige. And it had to do with the traveling baseball team, because they were traveling teams. They would go, to different cities to play each other. So they had to all, get in their van, their bus. James Earl Jones plays in this. Billy D. Williams is another one of the stars. I'm saying some names that, James Earl Jones is Darth Vader, for those of you who, I'm going to say it like this, is Darth Vader. So if you know who Darth Vader is, not Billy D. Williams. Billy D. Williams was seen as, for a long time, one of the most handsome. So he's the equivalent of what Denzel Washington has been for a generation. The most handsome man, at least for lots of African American women. So Billy D. Williams played in the movie, James Earl Jones, and lots of others. So if you ever get a minute, check out, and it's on, I purchased it, I think, on Amazon, Bingo Long, and it's just really funny. Like, you get a kind of history lesson. It's not exact, but you get an idea. Also, you get some idea of what some of the things that they had to go through. But trauma is not the name of the game. It is a comedy, in much the same way as is Uptown Saturday Night. Have you guys seen Uptown Saturday Night? That's another one. If you've never seen Uptown Saturday Night, oh, it is one of the most hilarious movies I've ever seen, and I bought that one on Amazon as well. You have, who's starring in that? Oh, Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier. And it's about a kind of heist, and it is unbelievably funny. And then they have another one called Let's Do It Again. So again, put those on your list of movies to watch. And you also get to find out, here we are with hip hop. Biggie Smalls, the artist, he took his name from an actor in that movie whose name was Biggie Smalls. And Biggie Smalls was, he was really, really, in my mind, super handsome. So that's the connection between Biggie Smalls and Uptown Saturday Night. And so I think the actor is of Caribbean descent. And yeah, again, he was super handsome. But these movies also teach you a lot about, Bill Cosby. I forgot Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was, I don't know how many people are watching Bill Cosby. And at the same time, though, he and Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte, if your children have never seen these, it's a really great movie to watch, I think, as a family, or have playing in the background. And Richard Pryor, is Richard Pryor in it? He might be, but Flip Wilson, if you're not familiar with who Flip Wilson is also in Uptown Saturday Night. So it's a chance to get to know older film stars, some people who have passed on, who were also involved in civil rights. Harry Belafonte, up until, did he pass away last year? Perhaps. Harry Belafonte was involved in civil rights until he passed away. Sidney Poitier, the same thing. So if you, like I said, if you get a chance, take a look at those movies, right? So again, here is Meghan's uncle's, I'm not sure if it's the official baseball card, but it is the card that I found online that has his statistics in it. Let me see, this slide is really hard to read. Let's see if I can bring it up on another slide so I can read it. Are any of you familiar with him, with Happy, with her uncle? Anybody? out there. I'm having a hard time bringing this other slide presentation up. No matter. I'll see if I can. No, I can't really. Anyway, well, it's up there on the screen. Gosh, my eyes are, yeah, it's super small print for me. So anyway, that is him. And I think he's pretty handsome, right? But born in 1899. So what kind of things do you think were happening, and how, what kind of life did he have? I would say going from, and it's conflicting things. I heard like there was one report that said he died in 76 and another one in 86, which is, so 10 years apart, which can make a difference. But just think about what was happening in 1899 when he was born. You would have had a whole lot of people who were formerly enslaved who were still around. So people who were formerly enslaved, let's say in 99, if enslavement ended for the most part between 1865 and 1870, if you will, these people, when he was born, would have been 30 to 35 years old. So he would have grown up with most of the elders that he knew, who would have had experience firsthand with enslavement, and who would have been cotton farmers and other kinds of farmers. And so that's a different kind of experience than what we're used to now. I know my grandmother, she used to talk to me about the people that she knew who were enslaved, and my grandparents, in fact, were sharecroppers, so they grew up on a cotton plantation, and they were also rice farmers. So this history that we have is not, we've talked about this in the past, it's not very old, right? And look what they did with their lives, from going from farming in Alabama to the Negro Leagues, now being recognized by MLB. It'd be nice if they gave some monies to the families. I don't think that'll happen. And also, not only that recognition, but also like her being the first African-American manager, African-American period, male or female manager in the real estate industry in the state of California. So I think that's huge, right? And then so we go from that, because you definitely have a proud people who work the land and who get to those high heights where they're literally looking down on the city of Los Angeles with this panoramic view from most of the windows in Baldwin Hills View Park, where Meghan grew up, around all of these wonderful people. They're literally looking down on the city. So from this, the view, because the view is the thing in View Park. And View Park has now been discovered, and it's changing a bit. But it used to be, like I said, I think I said it in one of the previous podcasts, talked about how when I was coming up, we could walk down the hill and, Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall was like a 10-minute walk, if you will. But at the same time, that's where like Crenshaw was. So you had people on Crenshaw, if you've ever seen Boys in the Hood, they were cruising. So you had a party every day where you had teenagers and kids or people who were older than teenagers just out on, that street, thousands and thousands cruising. We have lots of cruising laws now, but at that time, it's like people met their partners, the people that they're going to be in relationships with. So it's not just what we see. It's not mostly what we see. It's a slight part of what we see in these movies that are made often about African American stories. Just like I said, when I'm trying to dig up history for the Duchess, it's like, oh, so this is how you're framing us. This is how you're framing the squad. This is how you're framing the Duchess. You must see her through a lens of something that is less than in your mind, right? Not in our minds. She will never be less than in our minds. You must see her through a lens of something. You must other her, if you will. Hello, Sylvia. And so, that's not what we do in the squad. We see each other as we are, and we are aspirational. And if you see Meghan's family going from the literal farm, the literal plantation, if you will, and in a few generations, her achieving what she's achieved. And not only that, and then if you think about her marrying into and still being maltreated by the family. But we understand that Meghan couldn't exist in that space. She would never have been accepted in that space even, she never was completely, but she never would have even had a chance to get into that space if she was not excellent in every single way. If there was one blemish, just like so many other things, if Meghan had had a blemish, then that marriage would not have happened. She went in and she was strong, and not that I'm in love with that word, but she was brilliant, right? She was gorgeous. She was kind, triple threat, hardworking. So quadruple threat. She was so many things, graceful, so you get to whatever number we get to, that's what she was. She had to be excellent on all fronts. And so she's never framed or rarely framed as aspirational. She's framed through a different kind of lens as how she's trying to come up in a certain society, we're seeing that as negative. We don't see, not us, clearly, but it is really, she's framed as a social climber, right? Dude, we've been climbing in this country, in this world for centuries, and the kind of progress that the Duchess has made personally and, also in her family, for her auntie to go from being a housekeeper, and there's nothing wrong with being a domestic, right? Because she wasn't just a domestic. When we were enslaved on these plantations, when our family members were enslaved on these plantations, the plantations never would have thrived if you didn't have a whole lot of people who knew a lot about the soil, who were forced to work from dark to dark, whose bodies were used for capitalism. So you had these farms that were really wealthy based on that labor that people were producing. And so Meghan's uncle went from the plantation, if you will, or the family, probably his grandparents were enslaved, at least his grandparents. One of his parents may have been enslaved if he's born in 1899, right? Maybe his father was, if they were in their 30s when he was born. So literally there's a direct connection between Meghan and enslavement right there with her uncle, right there with her auntie. And so when I say these things are not long ago, if you're living in their house, if you're coming up with your auntie, your great auntie and your great uncle, and you're adjacent, you are literally having conversations about people in your own family who were enslaved. Don't tell me that Meghan is not amazing. Don't tell me that this is not even just rags. Our families were collared. And if we try to leave these spaces, how far are you going to get? What do your clothes look like? What do your feet look like? You probably don't have shoes, unless you're in the house. And even if you are, you're not going to get far. You don't have money. You don't have resources. And you are not what the police look like. And as soon as you leave, within hours, you have hours at most, the patrollers are out looking for you. So this story of the Duchess's uncle and the Duchess's family going from the literal plantation to being baseball's greatest, the GOAT of baseball, compared to Derek Jeter and other greats in this field. That's an amazing story, right? And so you'll see if I don't know how many of you have ever seen Negro League jackets. Like I said, most of us have heard of Jackie Robinson. There's typically one person. But again, Jackie was great. Jackie's brother was amazing. He was in the Olympics. He almost beat Jesse Owens. If it were not for Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson's brother would have taken most of those titles. And the sad thing about Jackie Robinson's brother, maybe he didn't win one or two of those medals because he didn't have the right shoes. Can you imagine an Olympic medalist or a contender who got number 2, who probably lost, to Jesse Owens, the greatest of all time, right? Defeated Hitler, if you will, because they said black people were inferior. He didn't have the right shoes, dude. Your family doesn't necessarily have that. They were not paying for those things for athletes at that time. And so Meghan's family has a direct connection to Jackie Robinson. Meghan's family has a direct connection to Satchel Paige. And we also know Jackie Robinson had first line to the White House and all of these other institutions. And so most people who were participating in these things also had to be political, because those are the things. Voting literally saved your life and kept you from being enslaved. I see Marshar, who's saying, as black people, we are told that we have to be excellent in all we do in order to get anywhere in this world. When Obama became president, Michelle said they had to be perfect while in the White House. Yeah, I'm going to give you some snaps on that. I have this little. So it is so true. And so when a lot of times when marginalized people show up in these workspaces, we feel like anything that, yeah. So so much of what happens is around skin, even to this day. So we see, and just with the reaction of people to Major League Baseball, including the Negro League stats, like, dude, how can you not include the greatest? Like, the people who were the greatest doing this thing, because they were not allowed to play your game. It doesn't mean that their game was inferior. It means that there was something, who stopped them during that time period from being able to participate. You don't get to stop people from being able to participate and penalize them. I mean, you can, but it doesn't take away from their genius. It doesn't take away from their excellence, right? And so there's a small remedy, and people are still all up in their feelings, the usual suspects around how come these things shouldn't happen, right? Let's see. Hey, Karen. Sylvia says, yes, my grandfather on my mom's side was in the Negro Baseball League. Yay! Yes, and imagine, like, this Sussex squad is a small community, right? We're not huge, so imagine what it would be like. It would be a similar thing. And so if you needed to get something done, again, watch 42. T'Challa / Chadwick Boseman. He was one of the most brilliant actors of our time, right? And he played Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson's wife, Rachel, is still alive. And she's still beautiful. She's about 100, 101. Unless she passed away within the last couple of months and I didn't see it. Her daughter Natalie's passed. Not her daughter. Rachel Robinson. And Jackie was, when we think about politics and we think about protests, Jackie Robinson was a major protester. He refused, like Colin Kaepernick, to ever stand for the national anthem. You can look it up. He just would sit there. He would not get up for it because he felt some kind of way about it, right? And so Kaepernick didn't do anything new. Kaepernick is just a person in a long line of people who were protesting, baseball players, the person who integrated and who, that integration of baseball allowed for larger integration of other spaces to happen, right? Because it was okay in large part for African Americans to clean and do these things, but you couldn't be seen as equal. And so when baseball was integrated, it allowed for schools to eventually be integrated. It allowed for other spaces to be integrated. And Meghan's uncle was right there. Can you imagine the conversations that her auntie would have had with her around the dinner table, would have had with her mother around the dinner table? And so when we say these things like she ain't black enough, like, what are any of us, and for people who are of other ethnicities, like, we can be hard on our families for, because we don't do necessarily what everybody else does. But isn't that how change happens? On the margins, like, somebody doing something different is what's responsible for most of the creative thought that we have, right? So yeah, so that's really exciting that for Sylvia, that your grandfather and your maternal grandfather was in the Negro Leagues. I want, like, if you know the name, put it in the chat. We can go look them up, right? We need to have, like, it'd be nice to have something where we could put in a corner somewhere on a community page some people who have influenced us or people that we would like for people to look up to get their names out there in the public domain. So again, I'm really, really excited, and I think her uncle's kind of cute too. Let's see, J. Matt says, we succeed when we look out for each other. We are better together than apart. Sussex squad, we have to lift each other up, or lift each other, stop fighting with each other. We don't have to agree on everything. Yeah, and we've been through that, right? We've been down that road this week, and it has been a tough road. And when we start when we start talking about other things that unite us, like, look at what we had to go through. And this isn't just a thing that happens on American soil, right? This thing started, a lot of it started, I always say Mansa Musa, but the Spanish were the first people to put skin laws in effect. After they were conquered by the Moors for around 700 years, they were like, nope, we're going to make laws that are anti-black. And so you can see in old ancient Spanish legislation laws that said certain things about the Moors, which is, code for black, right? So hello, Faith, how are you? So yeah, so I'm really excited to be talking about, anybody have thoughts or feelings about this or other subjects? Please put them in the chat. I want to hear what you guys are thinking too. So I agree with J Matt that we succeed when we look, because even today while I was prepping for the channel, I ended up in a site on YouTube, not just prepping, but just I mostly look at YouTube, and there was this, I'm not going to say their name, it was Lady something, right? And they had something about our Duchess on their front page, and so I listened to it, and it was the same thing, that the Duchess isn't black enough. Who gets to say, who made you the chief of what being black has to be, right? And I think lots of us in our own ethnic groups have been told, or communities, that we're not enough. Why do we do that? Why do we tell each other that we're not enough when we clearly are, right? I think that comes out of fear that you are going to betray us somehow. And yet, you are helping us to grow. I have a cousin that I love dearly. Well, I still love him. Passed away. He was in Mexico surfing, car crash. Beautiful, brilliant. Reminds me of a Morse chestnut. Except Stevie, his name was Stevie. His name is Stevie. Stevie was just the most brilliant, artistic guy, cultured. His friends came from all different communities, right? All different communities. Best friends are from this community. Just name it. When he passed away, all of his pallbearers were from different ethnic and racial backgrounds. It's just wow, this is beautiful. But when I was about 14, we were having a conversation about blackness, as we do in my family. We have a lot of political conversations, and this 16, maybe 17-year-old kid was talking about how you can be, what black meant to him, and it was just us doing exactly the thing that we want to do to the best of our ability. So he was on the rowing team up in Santa Barbara, which is close to where Duchess is too, right there, same almost city. He was a surfer. He was mostly the only black kid that was doing these things at that time, and just defying all these things, and he was amazing at it, and he was beautiful at it, and it was what he loved, right? So whenever I see a surfer, I think of Stevie. That's what I think of when surfing comes to my mind. I think of my Stevie. When I see guys and girls out there rowing, I think of Stevie. When I think of young actors, I think of, he was in a few movies, right? I think of Stevie. I think, when I see Morse Chestnut, sometimes I think of Stevie. And it's just beautiful to watch him. And then that's also, for me, it's also a challenge. Look what I did. Oh, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Sylvia. Joe White. I am going to look him up. And yeah, if you know who he played with or what the name of the team was, and they have these really cool Negro League clothing items. They have these jackets that lots of old timers, in church will be wearing, not just church, in the family, people in their 90s, 100s will have, and a lot of them will have known some Tuskegee Airmen. A lot of them will have known, and if you grew up in Alabama, you likely were adjacent to George Washington Carver. So he was around during that time, and I'm sure if there was not a direct connection between, in Alabama, between Meghan's great uncle, there was definitely, he knew somebody who knew George Washington Carver. And so that's just the world is a small place. And George Washington Carver was at Tuskegee when the Tuskegee Airmen were coming up. And George Washington Carver lived in the dormitory, never married, first African American to get a degree in agriculture from Iowa, right? took that. He was just a little kid who thrived in that space anyway, and he was kidnapped. All of these things happened to him as a baby. Ended up going to Iowa, coming back to Tuskegee, working. And I hear a whole lot of things around peanut butter with respect to George Washington Carver, and that's okay. That's nice, peanut butter, right? I don't know that that's even true. What is true, though, is that he worked for, like, Gerald Ford, the owner of the Ford Motor Company during the war, during World War II, hired George Washington Carver. He wanted to hire him permanently, and George was like, Mr. Carver was like, no, I'm going to stay at Tuskegee, but I will help you. So when we're at war, you don't get to use lots of other things like rubber that you would be able to have access to, because the war effort needs those things. So Ford Motor Company couldn't credibly bring in rubber for the automobiles that they were making. They had to find a substitute. How did they find a substitute for said rubber? This is a story that I learned as a kid and did even more research on it on my own. My uncle's sitting around, who were born in like my oldest was born in 26, right? So anyway, he talked about two things, or three, more than two things, but one of the things was the rubber that George Washington Carver created, a synthetic rubber from the sweet potato plant that Henry Ford was able to use to manufacture tires through the war. Henry Ford paid him, he wanted to pay him $100K. I'm going to get to comments in just a second. He wanted to pay Henry Ford, Carver, and Carver's like, no, donate the money to Tuskegee. I don't need it. I'm going to stay in the dorms, and I'll work for you. I'll work with you. Just donate it to Tuskegee University so that the school can keep thriving, right? So he did that, and there was this boll weevil, this insect that had taken over the crops in the United States. And so he started helping black farmers in Alabama to get past this boll crisis that was killing all the farms. And so other farmers found out that the black farmers had this secret, and he also started helping them, went to DC and helped the United States government. But we don't hear about that. Let's see, J-Matt. We succeed when we look out for each other. We're better together than apart. Did I read that one? Sussex. We have to agree on. Yeah, I did. Okay, so then we have, I don't remember the team. He was old when we met him. At the time, he was living in Texas. Just know he traveled with the team around the country playing other teams. And you know what's interesting? I found Josh Gibson statistics. So if they're not Josh Gibson, Meghan's Uncle Happy statistics. And so they're in the process right now of uploading a lot of these statistics from teams like the Kansas City Monarchs and from all the Negro League teams to the MLB site. Today and over, I would imagine, the next month or so, they're getting these statistics together, because whatever statistics stood before is no longer. When we integrate the statistics of the Major League Baseball players with the statistics from the Negro Leagues, then we have a Josh Gibson at number one now. And so I think there's some conflict around Babe Ruth versus Josh Gibson. I also grew up with my uncle talking about how amazing, or my uncles really, and my family, the women also, talking about the stories that they grew up with, the enslaved people that they knew, that they grew up with, the farmer. They were, like I said, my uncle was a farmer. So when we left the South in 39, when my grandparents left the South in 39, and they were young when they got married, they lost 3 children and decided, to dysentery, 2 of them, right, and decided they were going to get somewhere where their kids could get health care if they needed, and they didn't want them to go through all of that stuff that was happening in Arkansas. Moved to Ohio, and so they also knew lots and lots of people who were like held on the farm, but the farm didn't hold them, right, if you will. So they were sharecroppers. My grandmother had to, like, my uncle said he picked cotton like he'd never picked cotton. And his kid went on to be an attorney. His grandkid went on to play for, the Lakers and Duke and other, So we can have a kind of progress from a person who was on a cotton and rice plantation. When he was a kid, his parents were tied to the farm. So what else? Marshar, you were on fire yesterday. Listen and repeat. I love it. I agree with all you said. You were right. Don't let anyone mess with your comprehension. So Marshar, don't let anybody mess with her at all, right? My HB was gifted in the Kansas City. Okay. Okay, your husband was gifted a Kansas City Monarch baseball hat. Yes, the Monarchs, and also this team, the Homesteads. That team during that time was like the national champion, and so the Monarchs are like, they're so famous, right? There's so many of these teams. Did you guys see the First Lady's clarification? No, Karen, no. If you, I don't know if you can put it in the chat, but if you have it and you can copy and paste it, you can put it in the chat. That'd be great. Dumela. And all this other things. Yes, yes. I started watching some trash TV in South Africa about South Africa yesterday. It was, what is it called? It's on Netflix. It's this ultimatum. I'm like, okay. Ultimatum. Yeah, so when I think of our Duchess and I think about how she gets framed, I think about how my family was framed too, and like probably lots of our families in the chat from all over. And just a quick story, I don't know if I've ever told you, I come from a family of storytellers. So since I was a kid, I feel like I was born on the day that my grandma told me my first story, right? So dated a guy from South Africa, whatever. Love him, love his family, all of that. Anyway, so he told me a story about his grandfather. He's known to make up things, though. So he said his grandfather, I think, went to World War II, and he was fighting on the side of the Germans. Not funny, but, his grandfather from South Africa was fighting on the side of the Germans, and he said, yeah, when my grandpa got back from the war, the only thing, and this intersects again with Meghan's uncle, because he would have been playing baseball during, well, he would have retired by then, but the war was, that conflict was ramping up, right? So he said when my grandpa got back from Germany, they gave lots of, the Boers or whatever, cars and money, and they gave him a bicycle. I'm like, that's such a bad story. That is such a bad story. So anyway, no lutando. So anyway, I was like, I never asked his mom. Maybe I'll do that this weekend. I'll call and ask his sister, her name's Busi, if that story's true, because his mom would sometimes say, April, my son is a liar. I'm like, okay. Like he told me, anyway, his brother was named Andile because his mom wanted to hurry up and stop being pregnant. His mom, she was like, no, I wanted balance in my home. Anyway, so all of these things intersect. The war, World War II, Meghan's uncle, and even us. So we're intersecting. So we can see that Sylvia's uncle intersected with Meghan's uncle, I'm sure, at some point. Either at a baseball game, either they played at the same time and they played each other, right? And so this is also Sylvia's family directly intersecting with the Duchess, right? People who touched him touched, her, if you will. So even if it's a handshake at the end of a baseball game, there's a kind of intersection. Dumela. No, okay, I saw that. Yeah, so it is interesting to watch the media's portrayal. And so for so many generations, you had things like in this country, and you shout out your country's newspapers or whatever, especially if you know the old ones that were holding it down. Shout those things out. So now we have our own, this new media, and we get to say, we don't even, for the most part, it's kind of sad in some ways, subscribe to newspapers a lot of times in the same way that our parents did. We don't wake up to them necessarily on our table every morning. We don't hear, the crack of the newspaper hitting the door, or our parents, or we're not complaining necessarily about my newspaper got wet. And so during these times, when Meghan's uncle was in the Negro Leagues, there was also there were Pullman porters working on the trains who were helping to unionize that system so that people could get paid. And as they traveled from the north to the south, they would take these newspapers. They would take the NAACP's Crisis Magazine, Chicago's, the Chicago Defender. If you get a minute, there's a book that talks about the Chicago Defender, and you think, oh gosh, that's boring. It is one of the most intriguing stories that I've ever read. A story about this newspaper, and even the story of the Pullman Porters. Like, there's so much intrigue that happened, like people who were trying to break unions and keep people from entering into service unions, and ultimately they won. And at the same time, though, because the trains wanted people to have the same. Here we go. The trains, the owner of the railway wanted people to have the same experiences they had under enslavement, right? So they called all the black Pullman porters George. Can you imagine that? Your name is George. No matter who you are, nothing. That's what it was. And so these guys are like, okay, I'm gonna make this money. I'm gonna get this high-paying, job, and I'm gonna be able to travel. But it was dangerous going again into the South for lots of reasons. You had to behave, and you had to not just code switch, you had to personality switch, right? Let's see, the clarification. Oh, it is okay. I'm gonna have to. I don't have Twitter X, but I will have to check it out. Maybe I'll go scroll over there in a second and see if I can find it. I have several relatives that played professional sports. Cecile Fielder and his son, a cousin, played pro football. And my brother, Don Fielder. Oh, Tampa Bay, you go. That is amazing. And so you definitely intersect along, sports with so many different people, right? That is phenomenal. And yeah, and all family members that played in sports. This is like harder to see. Something men and women. It's underneath the heart, so I can't quite see it. Great track stars. Yeah, so you probably intersect with even people like Jesse Owens, who was, like we said earlier, the man who helped to turn the tide of World War II against Hitler, because there was this whole notion that black people, period, were great athletes. Imagine someone saying that today. So the rap we get today is that, too often, that African Americans are not smart. So imagine that, like, hearing that all the time, like, oh yeah, you're like, okay, well, yeah, you don't want me to Kendrick you, do you? So again, I'm gonna see if I can go to the next slide. What do we have here? It probably will feel like a surprise to me. Has it switched? Okay, so this is him, top left on the screen with the circle around him. And that's the Grays, the team that he played on with his coaches and his teammates. So you guys can see him up there. And yeah, just amazing. And the uniforms haven't changed much. The caps haven't changed much. Still, yeah, swaggy, handsome. Pardon me, George, is that the Chattanooga Choo Choo track 29? George, do you have the time? Yes, that is exactly right, Marshar. Marshar, George, do you have the time? Everybody was George. So they wanted to recreate the experience of being waited on by people who felt like enslavement after that was over. So they only hired African American men or black men to be Pullman porters to get that experience. And Sylvia says, and all the family members, that's what I missed. They played in college, men and women, great track stars. Thank you for that. That's great. My husband's father was a porter. He was able to buy a home in California. Yeah, the Pullman porters, they made really, really good money, especially after they were unionized. Unfortunately, after they were unionized, other forms of, the airline industry started coming into, commercial airline industry came up, and so people abandoned the trains. I still ride the train, though. I ride the Amtrak. I had to go south recently, last couple weeks ago when I was not here. Anyway, I took the train. I took the Amtrak. I still love that experience. But yeah, can you imagine somebody calling you George? It's like boy. Hey boy, pardon me, boy. Is that the chat? Yeah, that's exactly right. Do you have the time, George? Yes, that's just. And so that experience was an experience that was longed for by people who were able to force people to be enslaved, right? And so they mourned the fact that they didn't have they couldn't subjugate people in the same way. And so how do we recreate that experience? And sometimes you'll see it these days in plantation, in quotation marks, weddings, right? So I think Paula Deen had kind of a downfall partially around her. I think she was pining or opining for that period. And she also talked about, using a certain slur, right? So if that book that I was talking about the Porters, and it's just, and there have been more than one now, like there are a few that have been written, but some of them are a lot more well done than others, especially if you have the perspective of the actual Porters who were doing the work, and you want to see it through a lens of humanity, right? I would check out any of those, and the Chicago Defender has a lot of the story around because the Chicago Defender, was a black newspaper, was taken by Pullman porters and passed out. Like, you get a magazine, you read it, you leave it on the train. You get a newspaper, you read it, you leave it on the train. And so, like, the workers, so there were lots and lots of them, and that's how people in the South found out about what was happening in unions and other things around integrating and around different success stories. Because like when my grandparents were coming up, they got out of the South, but in the South, you had to jump off of a sidewalk. If someone passed you and you were African American, you had to give them the sidewalk. You were not allowed to, and it was, I don't know if these laws were written, but they were definitely enforced. So, there were lots of different ways that you had to deal with these aggressions, and I don't think they're micro. I think they're, so I got to get off the sidewalk. Like, my taxes pay the same money as other people's money, and at the same time, right? So, yeah, I would check. Yeah, you could buy homes. You could. And so Meghan's auntie, her Aunt Lillie, again, like, that's a perfect name. Let's call her. Can you imagine what would have happened potentially when they were like, oh, Lillie, we're going to call her Lillie after my Aunt Lillie, after, my grandma. Like, she's going to be Lillie. She's going to inhabit both sides of our family. For Doria's favorite aunt, the house that she lived in, for like a mom figure, if you will. And then at the same time, Harry's beloved grandmother, that same Lillie, and that's her uncle Happy's wife. That's Meghan's blood aunt, and she married him. And so that's partially the story of Lillie. Let's see, I see Marshall says black folks at that time knew how it was and what to expect. Right, absolutely. And then Sylvia says, my husband rode on the train with him. He was not allowed to look out the window when going through the South. It was dangerous. Yeah, oh my goodness. So there's a children's book. What is it called? It's called Betty Before Shabazz, or Betty Before Malcolm. I think Betty Before X. That's what it's called. Okay. It's called Betty Before X, and it's about Betty Shabazz, the wife of Malcolm X, who's Dr. Betty Shabazz. I should give her title. She earned it. And she lived in the South with her auntie, and I think it was her auntie. And her auntie passed away. Her great aunt was taking care of her as a little girl, and she ended up moving to Detroit. Had issues with her mom because her mom married a different person who wasn't her father. But she talked about seeing a tree at about age 5 or 6 with strange fruit in it, right? Some of us know that song that Billie Holiday sang about the humans in the trees, right? And so her auntie's trying to protect her from seeing that strange fruit. And we've talked about like what happened in this podcast around the bodies of the people allegedly that were in those spaces. And I've talked about how those bones, and not just the bones, pieces of people are literally still existing in laboratories and in colleges, the same way as Sarah Bartman, right? A native of South Africa who just got her bones repatriated to South Africa within the last 20 years because they were in, I don't know if I think it was a National Museum in France, because she was exhibited in a zoo. Just like Otabenga, who was an African American, he was brought here and called the missing link and put in the Bronx Zoo, and African Americans at Howard University and other universities were like, no, this is a man, get him out of there. And Otabenga, like, was literally put on display with the primates in the Bronx Zoo. They only recently apologized for that. And yeah, called the missing link, and he ended up, they got him out of the zoo. It was a big deal. He ended up working for the university in a certain capacity, but he never was okay, and he ended up, dying by suicide. And it was just like, how can you do these things? And at the same time, like us, we are those same people, in my mind at least, that are fighting in the squad, because we understand that trauma, that pain, that we feel it with respect to the Duchess. Like, we admire her, we love her, and a lot of us have that same understanding and recognize these things that have happened to her, because it ain't no new thing, right? And so the Duchess is experiencing these same kinds of things happening around her body. And so as a result of us recognizing it, we are fighting back in the squad simultaneously, and at the same time we're holding up a light to people like her uncle. Like, we are because they are, right? They exist in us. People like the Duchess's uncle, they exist in us right now. They exist in us today. And we wouldn't be who we are if we didn't, in one way, become excellent in our own separate spaces, and on the other side, we didn't fight back. Like, nah, man, you can't do this, right? So we have had to have a kind of dual, even more than dual, but at least a dual role. Like, on one hand, you gotta think, you gotta work, you gotta this, you gotta that, you gotta be the best, you gotta, and then at the same time, you also have to fight against these narratives that people will try and create. And again, it happened to Muhammad Ali, most hated man in America when he was coming up, happened to Medgar Evers, happened to Martin Luther King. And so, after, when I'm dead for 50 years plus, when I'm dead for 55 years, in King's case, maybe not quite 55 at that time. In the 80s, we are fighting for a holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King, right? And people are still going against that. And we're like, nope, we are going to get this. And then again, Stevie Wonder wrote that song, Happy Birthday, that a lot of us sing at our kids' and our own birthday parties to celebrate. And that thing originated and is one of the things that really helped to get that holiday on the books, is the feeling you get from, it doesn't make much sense, there ought to be a law against, anyone who takes offense, right? At a celebration for Dr. Martin Luther King. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, right? So we sing that certain song in that certain way. Plus, to me, it just sounds good. Like, so what am I missing? There was a time the only jobs black men could do, Marshar says, were be janitors who cleaned inside, washed the outside of trains, and this was as recent as the 60s, 70s, not a long time ago. That's right, and I would say that, even in certain spaces in this country, it's almost the same. Like, you can do this job, but there's definitely a glass ceiling. You cannot be a manager, you can be a worker. And we're going to say, we'll find a reason for lots of people in lots of spaces to not let you climb above a certain status, right? And so we saw it with President Obama. We broke that glass ceiling. We see it, though, in so many, with the Duchess of Sussex, right, Marshar? Would you agree that the Duchess of Sussex is dealing with a kind of glass ceiling of her own, because these are the spaces that are reserved for certain people, and you, with your exotic blood, doesn't matter the percentage, you don't get to come here. And if you do, we are going to let you know every day that that's not a space that was designed for you. You don't belong there, and whatever we have to do, we're going to keep you out of it, allegedly. That's what it feels like. Let's see, Marshar says, Sarah finally got the respectful burial. Yeah, she deserved. Her story is a hard one to stomach, but it shows how we black people still aren't seen as human to racists today, in my opinion. Yeah, Sarah Bartman, Otabenga, like, it's just, the Otabenga story is so bad, too. He had his teeth. You see it today with a lot of people who, not a lot, but some people who are in prison, often, or they want to just look like they're outside of, the certain spectrum that is quote unquote normal, they will sort of shape their teeth into triangles, right? It could be for processing meat. I would imagine that if your teeth are carved that way, it's going to be easier for you to deal with a kind of food, that you're trying to consume. So there's a reason to look like your tribe for what, just the same as piercings. So I had these teeth that, that were carved into kind of triangles, and so you're the missing link. And we're going to put you, like we're going to put Sarah Bartman on display. We're going to put you on display in a zoo, and he never got over that. And we saw, like, if you know the story of Matthew Henson, who is related to Taraji P. I think it's maybe her great-grandfather. First person to, along with Matthew Perry, right, or Robert Peary, Peary, to reach the North Pole, which was the equivalent to the moon when they were coming up, like. And so it took them four or five trips to get there. I think they missed it by 30 miles at one point of getting to the North Pole. Didn't lie and say they got there. Came back, did the trip again. And there was this beautiful movie called Glory and Honor. I cannot find it anywhere. I owned the VHS. It was a TNT movie that Delroy Lindo starred in that talks about Matthew Henson's story. So Matthew Henson learned to speak Inuit. Matthew Henson made friends with the Inuits, who were the closest people to the pole, and learned their folkways, and they taught him, learned how to, they helped him with coats. And so Matthew Henson, after becoming friends and learning the traditions, was able to help Robert Peary, who had the money, to get to the North Pole. And again, there's another connection between this co-discoverer, they call him, Matthew Henson, with Robert Peary, which was, again, the equivalent of going into space when they were coming up. No one had ever done it. It was this race to get there. And their story was one of, like, serious trials and tribulations. And what they did to make money for the trip, that voyage, not they, what Robert Peary did was he brought Inuits back, convinced them to come back, kind of like Pocahontas. And they didn't survive the United States, and then they literally put them, not allegedly, they put them on display in the museum, and that broke Matthew Henson's heart. He had major conflict with Robert Peary about his friends just, being, after they're gone, put on display in the National Museum. It was just, some people would say not well done. And so again, at this time, maybe a little bit before, all of these things are converging. You have these people like today, like what's the new frontier? I would say AI right now is the new frontier. You can do so much with AI, and then once that gets to a certain point, it's hard to say, because I think computers are becoming smarter than humans. And so they can produce a massive amount of information in a way that we can't. Like, I can't crank out a painting like I did that for that one episode, 20 paintings in an hour, and it can do it much faster than that, but that are relevant, that relate to a theme. The mind can say, this is what I want it to look like. And at the same time, humans can't process that amount of data, and that, to come up with 20 paintings or 10 paintings or 5 that you could literally sell. You can do that with AI, right? And so at the same time, though, what's happening with human creativity? If we don't continue to read and do these things, humankind, and we're going to possibly be lost. Because once the machine gets smarter than us, what's the point of a human being when we do so many destructive things? Just, you can look to any culture on the planet and see what kind of harm that we've committed, right? So, let's see. I'm sorry, that part of the squad are exhibiting internalized oppression. Am I missing something? Did I miss something? That part of the squad are exhibiting internalized oppression. I think I missed something you guys were talking about. Stevie Wonder revamped the Happy Birthday song, of which I like better. I know, right? For Dr. King. Yes, Prince. Karen says, yes, Princess Meghan is breaking glass ceiling like Beyonce told her she was put there for systematic change. She is, and it is not easy. Like, no, in my opinion, and it's why I'm here, no one should have to go through that alone, right? no one. And like I said from the beginning, my beginning was before the engagement. There was some information that I saw right before it got huge. It was kind of like just a whisper, and I Googled her every day to see what was happening, if they had broken up yet, or like what the deal was. This must have been after the party that Harry went to with Meghan. Anyway, and then after the declaration was made, I was on Twitter back then, and I used to engage in Twitter wars with a lot of the people that we call often allegedly derangers. These people who have these, and then there was this whole thing around Thomas Markle's daughter, calling her a pushy princess when she was, allegedly not. She'd seen her maybe a handful of times in her whole life. What can you know of someone genuinely that you don't have a real relationship with, like the Duchess of Sussex, if you are not actively a participant in their life, right? So she's what, 70 something? She's quite a bit older also than the baby that would have been our Duchess, right? And so it was interesting when Meghan came up with her crest, and when she was given her own coat of arms, that it was her personal one, but it didn't extend back any generations. I was like, oh, even though Kate Middleton's family, they were given, from my memory, they were given their own, for that family. But the Markles, I think that they clearly had seen a lot of the behavior that did not align with them publicly, and we're like, no, we're not putting our signature on this. And so if anyone gets a crest, it will be personally the Duchess of Sussex. And so and every day, if we look, we see these stories around the Duchess of Sussex that continue to be put out there, but we hear a lot about, like, she doesn't belong in this space. And a lot of us black folk are guilty of saying that she doesn't belong in that space because she doesn't. And I think Stevie, like, what does Stevie say? While he's out here on the rowing team, is he black enough? While he's out here surfing, right? Is he black enough? While he's out here being a whole artist, is he black enough? And when he passes away, when you see all the pallbearers that are from different spaces, you see what black is from Stevie's perspective. It is loving. It is befriending. It is learning, because when you learn, for my experience is that, like, most of my friends were in high school, were from other places. I went to pretty much predominantly black Catholic elementary school, black middle school, black American middle school, and then high school was integrated. And my friends, my mom told me to be friends with people from different communities. And my friends were from, Hong Kong, Denmark, Japan. I had a pen pal from Barbados. I got a pen pal from Right On Magazine. Shout out to Right On Magazine. And yeah, like, I've recently tried to connect. It's hard. I'm having a hard time. It's been a long time reconnecting to my pen pal. But we wrote for like probably 20 years, 10 years, at least 15 years. We wrote from probably aged 11 or 12 to, I was at least about 30. So maybe 20 years we wrote letters, and it was a beautiful thing. And she was always at a party on a beach, and that's probably why I have a special kind of love for Rihanna, right? Because of her. But by knowing and doing and existing in these spaces, we learn about people from other countries, and we get to take the best parts of them and incorporate those things into our lives. And we eat better, we dance better, we are more cultured, we have a different understanding that's more nuanced. I remember being in South Africa not that long ago, but meeting a guy from Zim, as they say, who was schooling me about Robert Mugabe. You Americans make me sick coming and telling me you know everything about Robert Mugabe, this, Robert Mugabe, that. And so, I mean, this intense debate, and it was a beautiful thing around. And so, and I would say that we've been doing that when we, go into spaces where we're uncomfortable and we're welcomed and we decide to learn. So Meghan, in my mind, has been being her best black self because she has been connecting with people from all around the world for a very long time. When she went to Argentina to work, when she's done lots of things, right? And so people will say that ain't black enough. Like, who gets to take her black card? Like, can somebody explain that to me? Like, how do we get to say, oh, I was saying the squad was fighting. Okay, yeah, thank you, Sylvia. We were, in my mind, maybe I'm a bit off, but I felt, and again, this lady that I went on the site, and her site is called Lady Something, and she was saying something about the First Lady of Nigeria, and she was saying that, I'm really glad she made the correction, I can't wait to an amendment, but she was just tripping. I was like, what is this? How did I end up, and now I've given her viewership, like, I can't anymore. So Karen says, Professor, yesterday you were asking if anyone wanted to have a one-on-one with you. I'd like to have that. Okay. Do you know what my email address is? The Sussex Studio Experience at Gmail. So Marshar says, I was late to the chat, but I'm seeing more black content creators giving backlash against the First Lady. They aren't Sussex ones, but what she said against black Americans is stuck a strong chord. She started... na 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 na. If you've not seen A Different World, there's a really good episode where they do that and they're having a step show. Connie says, Sylvia, I think has cooled down. Have cooled down. Yep, the comment of the First Lady did affect sensitive souls, even mine, but I'm over it, and so are others, I guess. Yeah, I think we did some work in here. Hopefully that helped a bit, right? It was a tough few days with me feeling like, what's happening? Sort of dysregulated and outside of my normal way of existing. And then, I came in here with you guys, and it just felt so much better, and I feel a lot better, too. So I would second that. Karen says, Professor, you mentioned yesterday what you would like is for us to get together in a group. That's what we're doing in September in New York. Oh, all the Sussex supporters are invited to join. See info. Okay. Yeah. Sylvia says, yes, Meghan is sharing with the world, representing her best black self. And if it's a shelf, it might be from behind. I don't know that Meghan has a big shelf, but I think you meant self. But again, we can extrapolate. Yes, Lady Rose says, hi, family, I am late. Hey, Lady Rose, we've missed your commentary. What's happening in the Yoruba streets today? And so we were talking about the Negro Leagues and how I think we're all connected based on our ancestors. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. There are connections and intersections that happen in these spaces, And so, I know I've talked a bit about my uncle, my favorite uncle, rest in peace, uncle, who worked with Idi Amin, and how we see Idi Amin as one way and brutal, all true. And at the same time, he was donating monies to civil rights organizations to help in this country for people to have civil rights. And so that's an intersection between Uganda, and that's personal in my own family, to what's happening. And my uncle was presented with citizenship and land in Uganda. I don't know what happened to it. I said I was going to try and figure that out. But so we've been trying to connect, and we have been connecting around the diaspora. And all of us, whether we're from Ukraine or South Africa or whatever, we came together for a reason in this space, right? So Sylvia says self, not shelf. I know there's some shelves in South Africa. I was like, whoa, what do we have in the U.S.? If they have that, what do we have? Anyway, that's a whole nother can of worms. Mary Mann says, Professor Zinzi and all gathered here in support of the indomitable, amazing Princess Meghan. Hello. Yoruba Street is quiet today. I haven't heard. Okay. We understand that there has been a kind of, would we define it as a correction or an amendment to whatever the previous commentary was. Yeah, so here is, we were intersecting, though, the Duchess of Sussex with her uncle who played, her mom's uncle, her great uncle who played for the Homestead team in the Negro Leagues. I'm sorry, I'm just like bumbling. So he played in the Negro Leagues. This is him. His picture is circled or encircled, and we talked a little bit about how Major League Baseball decided to begin including the statistics of the Negro Leagues into their own statistics around baseball players. So that's a really, really big win, and a kind of repair, right? A kind of reparation for the harm that has been. And this is Satchel Paige. I talked about Satchel Paige, who played, his last team I think was the Cleveland Indians, and he played up until he was 59 years old. I'm like, dang, can you imagine what that would have looked like if Major League Baseball was integrated and we got to see him play against the best. I mean, the Negro Leagues were amazing, and they were the best too, right? But if we got to see him at 35, but the fact that they are including those statistics, we do get to see it now, right? We get to see him and his statistics rightfully placed in a kind of, in the canon of baseball, Major League Baseball. Lady Rose says Idi Amin was wonderful. He had his challenges. Ooh, have any of you seen The Last King of Scotland? Some people think he was bipolar. Maybe some narcissism too, potentially, allegedly. But Indians, he wanted to kick everybody who was not Ugandan, I think, or at least African, out of Uganda, and he did. And so that was whew. So he had a sort of policy around Africa for Africans at that time, which was, he told them the truth and kicked them out of Africa. So that's why they call him. Yeah, he did a lot. And at the same time, he was helping other organizations trying to help us get free in other spaces, right? He didn't sanction his wife's affair, though. Like, have you seen Kerry Washington played one of his wives in The Last King of Scotland? Forrest Whitaker got an Academy Award for that performance. And so just intersecting. And I remember being, as a kid, seeing my uncle's photographs in all of these, these family albums, photo albums all over Africa. So I grew up looking at these images, and so it was a normal thing in my family again, and my friends would say my family's different. And I just thought, you grow up in a family, you assume that this is your family's just like everybody else's, and you find out, oh no, not everybody's family is doing a lot of the same things. Lady Rose says, I liked him. He was paying back what they did to us. I believe he was. He could have been. He probably was. Like, I don't know which one that they were using over there at that time. Yeah, he was, in my mind, he was interesting. There was definitely a duality, and he didn't play. There was a kind of also brutality to the way he ruled. My uncle would probably side with your opinion in a lot of ways around that. He was very harsh and brutal too at the same time, in my opinion. Whew. Sylvia says, I'm going back to work. I've enjoyed the podcast. Bless my... Okay, Sylvia, you have a wonderful time back at work. Mary Mann says, conspiracy time. Ooh. So his royal... Okay, I'm going to try to read ahead. Willie Parker Bowles are all traveling out of the country. Oh, really? I hadn't heard that. Where are they going, Mary? They're traveling out of the country. He was probably schizophrenic, but girl, he taught England a lesson. He definitely had... I don't know about... He had a psychotic... Like, I don't know how much his psychosis was. Right. He could have been, like... It's interesting to try and do psychoanalysis, on different people. I've done some of that in my work too. England went into a hunger due to what he did. Oof. Yeah, he didn't mess around for sure. And that was and France is having a challenge, not France, Switzerland I think is having a tough time. Connie might know more about the chocolate in Ghana, the Ghana chocolate. I think Nana Otto said no more chocolate. I don't know if they worked that out or not. So Satchel Paige, this is him. Like I said, he definitely knew Meghan's uncle because they played on the same team for a while. And so he's playing with the greatest at that time, effectively winning the Negro League championship, being on that team with Josh Gibson, who there's no real argument around whether or not he's the base hitter that's ever played the game of baseball. Like, he was definitely a hitter, and so he's number one in those statistics that I put up earlier today, and that's causing some people to be in their feelings. So this is what, I don't know, many of you, if you've seen Nick Wright, he is on Fox Sports. He's brilliant journalist, sports journalist, super smart guy. So he said, this is our American history, he said. It's messy and it's imperfect, and there's no right way to right these wrongs. But this is a deep step and acknowledgement that when we've talked about the best baseball players, it's really small type for me, guys, of the early 20th century, we've really just been talking about the best white baseball players, because for Babe Ruth, there was Josh Gibson and Rogers Hornsby, and there was Cool Papa Bell, and for Bob Feller, there was Satchel Paige. So this should be a moment of great celebration, but of course, set your watch to it. There's folks who are going to be angry and voicing that anger, and they can't really quite tell you why they're angry. But what they know is they're angry. They're angry in the same way when you hear folks say, listen, I don't have anything against black pride, but if I say I have white pride, there's a problem. So Nick Wright is this, he's a Caucasian white journalist, and he's actually also married to a black American woman. But he's one of the most brilliant people in sports journalism, just in general. Like, his takes are always super smart, and he says a lot of things. Here are Meghan's uncle's statistics, his career stats. So you can go on MLB, MajorLeagueBaseball.com, and find these. So let's see. Lady Rose says, don't get me started with all that cacao coming from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. I think some people, Karen says, get confused why the Sussex Squad or Sussex supporters community space came out. It's about the Sussex family and defending them, no one else, even if they mean what's said. And then Marshar says, the First Lady in her explanation email, just damage control. I wonder if the Four Kings and others had something to do with her backtrack. But she's blaming the British media. Okay, I'm like, wait, what's that mean? I heard what I heard, felt her words. So there has been a cleanup on aisle 4, right? Marshar. And she's not taking responsibility, accountability. It's damage control. I'm sure the Four Kings. I would imagine, like, that's what I'm thinking too. That she is, there's been some damage control, and they're trying to get Invictus Games, and they also just made this woman a princess. And so the Four Kings, if they're standing above everything, which is what I've been led to believe, then of course they're going to say, you're damaging our daughter, right? This is our daughter. No, you don't get to. And no matter if you meant to or not, I could be completely wrong, but your words are being interpreted this way. And so we need to fix this, because now you have diasporans mad. Princess Meghan doesn't feel safe emotionally. Like, she probably feels targeted and hurt around this, and the Sussex Squad is definitely making our voices heard in all kinds of ways. Like, please clarify. So, I can give her some credit for doing that. I haven't read it yet. Marshar seems to be like, nah, I'm good. I don't know if that's correct, but my queen, Marshar, where's the First Lady's email? Okay, Lady Rose, I saw someone posted on Facebook. Hi, CL. Hi, Profess. Is Meghan's cousin Mookie related to this uncle too? I wouldn't be surprised. He is uncle by marriage. Her Aunt Lillie that she lived with, who was the first black real estate manager in the state of California, was married to him, and he was born in 1899. And so again, he played with Satchel Paige, and Paige played until like till the 1960s. I think he retired in 64. So that's like, dang, 1964. So he played in the Negro Leagues first, and those things were recorded by black people, in the Negro Leagues. And those records are now being translated into the annals of Major League Baseball. So they're putting his stats, Meghan's uncle. Like I said, I found these stats on MLBtoday.com. So these are their official stats of her uncles, if you're a baseball head or whatever. I'm not. I watched it with my dad sometimes. Watched a perfect game be pitched once. I'm not a big baseball head. I'm more of a hip-hop head. I know some about basketball and football and all that, but yeah. So anyway, is Meghan's, maybe. So that is, even if the other person didn't mean what they said, it's all about the Sussexes. Sorry. Okay, Karen. They said we didn't understand what First Lady said. I guess we need to go back and read comprehension English in high school. We didn't understand. Perhaps, if so, was there an explanation? Or was it just you guys don't understand? Parents just don't understand. Like, I don't know. Marshall says damage control to the hilt, but she isn't taking responsibility of her words. She's gaslighting, saying it's the British media that twisted her words, but we heard with our lying ears, right? Nah, get out of here. Yes, and if she's blaming the media, that's interesting, right? If she's blaming them, to me, does anybody agree with that? Like that, if she's saying, okay, media, you guys are also doing this, that she's going against the thing that some people were saying, that they thought she was in league with Charles and the BM. Ooh. I didn't mean that. I mean, I get, but isn't that interesting? The BM. So maybe I will use BM from now on. Oh, wow, I didn't recognize that double entendre, the BM. Okay, I'm going to take a breath like, whew, the BM is the BM. It's a bunch of BM, right? Yes, I'm goofy. So again, I'm going to read Marshall's again. Damage control to the hilt, but she isn't taking responsibility of her words. She's gaslighting, saying it's the BM. Well, BM does twist sometime, right, Marshall? I'm awful. But we heard with our lying ears, right? Now get out of here. Okay, so Karen says, yes, it's damage control, but it's too late. Her statement is already mainstream. Damage done. Yes, and for me, I got the slight giggle of a, 7th grader saying BM at least 3 or 4 times. Say, my headphones just fell off. Say BM 3 times and see if that association doesn't kick in. Like, wait a second. Yes, we shall call them the BM from now on, and entendres intended. Thank you, Kendrick. Yeah. Okay, Lady Rose. We'll catch you next time, or yeah, take a listen to the replay. So I can't wait to read that statement. Should I search for it, or should I just? Let me see if I can quickly. I'm gonna keep talking for a second to see if I can find. Got the whole podcast script up here. That didn't go. We have been doing some of the work that we didn't just get. Like, I'd say we've done 70% of the work around the stuff that we planned. Let's see. First Lady, Nigeria statement today. Did we say news? I'll go to news. Okay. So, nope. It's not up here yet. So it's on Facebook. I don't have... So you guys said it was on Facebook? I just remembered I just opened a page. Yes, lawmakers. No, I can't find it. It's not up here yet. Sorry, guys. I don't have the official words on that. So, damage control. It's all BM. It's all BM all the time. Yeah, I love that. I just got that association. I'm sure lots of you have heard that before or figured that out. Oh, gosh. I'm not going to say British media anymore, though. If I say it, let me know. Omar Shar says she saw it on Facebook. Yeah, I opened an account for the
for the page, but I haven't really used it, and I wouldn't know how to navigate. I'm not really good at Facebook yet. But I think it's good. So do you guys think it's good? Okay, Karen said she put the link there. Okay. Maybe I can find it. So I think it's a good thing. If you think it's a good thing that she at least, even though she blamed BM, it was a bunch of BM. Marshall, can we agree that it was BM? that happened? That we read a bunch of BM? So I think the damage has definitely been done, right? They have been able to take that narrative and twist it, that BM, and twist it. And I think some of us, I asked for the BM needs a BM, that's the uptight problem. I definitely agree. And I think, for me personally, I asked for correction. So at least we can begin to weaponize the correction. And if it is what I have also heard, that the First Lady, some people believe stands above the king, I have a hard time with that one, but I don't culturally come from there, especially not recently. So if it is true that the four kings are above her, then they would have had to say, this is making us look bad because we did something for Meghan that no one else has ever done for anybody. Like the four kings of the realm, have made this woman a princess, and now people around the diaspora and around the world are weaponizing your words against Nigeria's, all caps, princess, right? So, let's see. Marsha girl, you and John Commonwealther say the same thing. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that she at least started the cleanup. I think that perhaps, we may never know, she might write a book that we read and discuss it, or it could have just been like, you know what, we don't care what you do, just clean it up, blame the media, do whatever you need to do. The word is to, okay, typing here, got it, okay. So, yeah, nobody thinks it was does anybody, if you think it's a good thing that at least she started the cleanup, am I out here on an island? That's okay, I don't mind. But if you agree that maybe it was a good thing for her to begin the dialogue, to perhaps begin the process of undoing even 1% of the damage that was already done, at least we can use that and say that, no, there was a correction. And it's y'all's fault, right? Life is short and there's no time for BS. They all need a BM. Yeah, but keep that stuff over there, at their house. Is don't bring it over here by me, please. Have it contained in a nice isolated spot. I can imagine 7th graders, what they would do with these statements. And so yeah, that makes me feel a little bit better that at least there's been a kind of clarification around the First Lady's words, even if forced. Because, maybe in the shop I'll put something about the BM. What do you guys think? When I have so much to do around this channel, it's so much. But that might be a cool thing that I could get 7th graders and other people to wear. The BM is stinking. have a bunch of the people who represent that. And who are some of the people who are in the BM, guys? Robert Jobson is a member. Or Robert Jobson, let me say this. Robert Jobson represents BM. Camilla Tominey allegedly represents BM. Who are some of the other ones? Why can't I think of them? There's so many of the people who represent the large BM, right? So, let's see, Karen says, I think that is what we were fighting against. The fact that she made the statement and used Princess Meghan's name, the damage was done from the get-go. Yeah, it really was. I know, I was in my feelings. I was definitely in my feelings, and I'm okay. And it felt like diaspora wars. What is happening? We are all united. And I think I tried not to just go to my poll and say, I'm just going to sit here. And so, yeah, I wanted to have an understanding. And then from what I felt was, at least for the squatties, they felt like when we attacked her words and the speech that we were attacking them. I didn't feel that way, but it's valid. If their feelings are valid too. If they felt that way and they were hurt because they felt like we were attacking them, and then at the same time, I felt hurt because I thought, here we go again, diaspora wars around using the Duchess's name in a sentence like that that's adjacent to these other trashy kind of words. I wasn't okay with that. And I think that correction I haven't read it yet, so I might come back and be like, nah, that was a trash thing. But at least right now, in my mind, at least she's done something. Yes, Inzi, I'm glad for her response. Grace extended to the sister. Okay. Marvin says, Karen W., I think the internal row was getting to her. Yeah, all that. Do you think the BM will get to her now, though? That she's accused the BMs of BM. Do you think that the BM will get to her as a result of her pointing out allegedly that this is what happened? I bet it's smelling like all kinds of interesting over there. Marshall says she's in cleaning nothing up when blaming the Dragloids for her actual words. She said they were twisted. How can you twist? Why is Meghan yeah, why is Meghan in Africa and all the other stuff she said? That line was hard to read. That line was hard to take in. As if Meghan was having some kind of negative effect of, wearing what she wore and being in Africa, like this whole continent, right? She was having a negative effect on the girls there. When, the girls, like, people come into their homes every day on social media who were all kinds of clad and not at the same time. So, yeah, I think that was part of the things that we saw and understood, a lot of us, as personal. Let's see. So, hurt was, yeah. And so the response, that we tried to have a response, I think, for the most part, versus reacting, and we still felt what we felt, right? And at the same time, I think, as we've talked about, they also, people who understand or who are from Nigeria in particular, felt attacked by us expressing that we were like, nah, these words ain't right. Like, so, let's see what else we have. Cynthia says, I don't think the First Lady meant to diss Princess Adumazi. However, she should have finished her thought and the sentences. Absolutely. And hopefully she explained the why is Meghan in Africa part too. Like, that was Cynthia, I mean, would you agree that was like, that felt a little bit, I think that was the thing that was weaponized the most, or one of the 2 or 3 things that were weaponized the most, is why are you saying, why is Meghan specifically in Africa? You know that she's invited here and she's being adored here, and it was such a beautiful thing, and we're such a beautiful squad. Yeah, she should have finished her thoughts and her sentences. And yeah, so Arrington W says, I was totally in my feelings as well, but we cannot deal through thorny issues without, I missed the T, without, for me, being faithful to extend grace if a person at least tries. Lesson learned again, if BM and language nuisance. Yeah, I can give grace too and want to extend grace. And, again, as the brain understands that if it happens again, there will be no grace, right? Because then I think it will feel for a lot of people that it is intended. So, I'm going to say this. I feel a little bit sorry for her too, though. I know, go ahead and just like, I would not want to be in that position and feel like, even if I messed up, and she definitely messed up, I wouldn't want to be in a position, if I was misunderstood, where like I'm being attacked, right? And that will hopefully help her understand that maybe her speech should be reviewed before you say things like that, before you say anything, especially about other cultures and people from other cultures. It likely needs to be checked if you think there's a kind of language barrier. I'm not sure if that was the case either, but I saw something. Marshar says First Lady needs a massive VM and keep Meghan's name and Black Americans' names out of her mouth in a disparaging way. She's evoking tribalism. And there's the problem. We all were once the same African tribes. Yeah, it felt a little bit... it felt like a lot of us were going to our own tribal areas. And I think that naturally when she says something, that's going to come up again for us, right? But I think that for now, my feelings are, if I was feeling triggered on an 8 out of 10 before, I'm probably feeling triggered on about a 3 right now just by hearing it. So I'm not like outside of, it still bothers me, but I don't feel like I felt then, like I just need to take a breath and like, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to read it. I'm ready to see what she said so that my brain can begin the process of extending grace, right? And I don't know, Mushar. I don't know if that I don't mind her blaming the BM so much because these are the ones who were feeding. And I don't get a whole lot of things right for, like I don't always or even mostly have a lot of agreement. But I don't mind her saying that they are partially responsible because they are in fact the ones who were like eating off of it. So but that's what they want to do, right? They want to weaponize it and have food so that they can continue to be able to eat off the Duchess's, existence, if you will. And so, yeah, I'm sure they ramped up the discourse a lot. We heard what we heard. She said what she said. Mistakes were made, and the BM definitely stoked the BM. they were stirring it in the pot. Like, man, can y'all take that BM outside somewhere? Because we don't really like BM in our homes, if you will. See, I'm still going to be playing with this from now on, this BM thing. Thank you, Kendrick. Let's see. Arrington says, true, repeated behavior means intentionality. Yeah, so I think and I heard from some squatties that were really, really in their feelings around people that, that they were aligned with. And I'm like, oh, guys, we got to give each other grace in the squad. We can't, we got to find a way through this. Because we need all the channels that we have out here doing this work for us, and we're going to make mistakes, right? And sometimes the mistakes come from us being in our feelings, like, oh no, I'm in my feelings, and I'm mad. I'm going to be mad. Maybe I should turn off my podcast today. If I am personally mad, I probably not saying anything about anybody else. If I'm like feeling a lot of upset, I don't want that to translate to you guys. If I think it's not going to be a healthy thing, let me say that. And sometimes though we have to do the work, and so it's hard to navigate our feelings, and we've talked about this when we are like experiencing high emotions, and it's hard to get into thinking brain when we just want to like, no, this is hurting me, this is bothering me, and we don't want to hurt the squad, we don't want to hurt each other, and we're just having a hard time navigating through the challenge that's in front of us. And so, maybe asking for grace and giving grace on both sides, or on all sides more than both sides, can, because like, why would we be doing this work if we didn't love each other and the Duchess? And you guys might be able to think of a few reasons, but like why we would do this work if we don't love Meghan. But we've been pretty productive. Like, if I've done the right thing 99% of the time, and my sin, my error wasn't so egregious that, and I'm asking for forgiveness, or if you see that I'm clearly a deer in headlights, how do we begin to extend grace to each other so that we continue to have wonderful channels up even when we have a disagreement? Can we have open dialogue in the squad so that we can make a repair after the rupture happens, right? So there was a rupture. I feel like there was a rupture. I think also there's a rupture, and I think it's being repaired. Let's see. Marshar says, just like Kate, I don't feel sorry for her. She's a public figure and should know she's speaking more to the people who are sitting in front of her. More to the people. Okay. She gave the BM fodder. She was wrong in my opinion. Yeah. Yes, I agree. She was wrong, right? That it was because of the way it felt, it hurt, right? So if something's hurting, fix it. Like, get the nail out of my finger. We'll discuss, like, needs to be cleaned up, and how do we not have this again, right? Arrington says, I so agree, Marshar. Choosing to be a public figure carries greater responsibility to speak carefully. It does, I agree, and we're also, I think, going to have some cultural differences. When you're more insulated, you probably are speaking differently than when you think you are speaking to a larger audience. Potentially, like, you know. Karen says her statement was wrong on all levels because everyone thinks she said was describing Princess Meghan. Princess Meghan is an American movie star woman addressing comfortable shoulder back out shorts. Yeah. And so we saw pictures of the Queen wearing whatever the Queen Elizabeth wore too. But it's easier to criticize someone in our family often than it is to criticize people outside. And sometimes we get too familiar and it's a kind of like, you don't know me like that kind of thing. Especially you don't know me like that to be disparaging me in public. Like, this is, if it was a dialogue that was kept in the Sussex squad family, that would be something else. But since it was magnified by the BM, and, you know, and it was really kind of funky out there, the BM made it really funky, then, you know, in hot weather of Nigeria, they really try to make it funky and stinky. And so then that repair needs to be had. And so where's the alcohol? Where's the antibiotics? We need to clean this wound up so that we can move forward. And I think if she said, just me, I think if she said something, you know, potentially she was forced. And it's a start for me. And I don't expect or hope that other people will feel the same way. I want everybody we all have a right to our opinion, right? And we don't have a right to facts, right? So we understand the facts are A, B, C, D, E. We understand that the feelings were A, B, C, D, E. We understand that this is a kind of remedy that happened, and we get to choose how we individually and as a squad move forward, right? Did I read this one? Her statement was wrong on all levels because everyone thinks, yep, okay. The American podcasters are up in arms. Her backside, they're giving Princess Meghan lots of grace for the way she was dressed. I'm smiling from ear to ear. So, I'm going to read that again, Marvin. The American podcasters are up in arms. Her backside, they're giving Princess Meghan lots of grace for the way she was dressed. I'm smiling. So, I'm unclear, like, I'm an American podcaster. I'm a Black American podcaster, an African American podcaster, and I'm trying to. So giving Meghan, you're saying they're giving Meghan grace for the way she was dressed? Is that what's being said? I'm not sure. I don't want to interpret your words in a way that you don't mean them. So do you think that Meghan needed grace for the way she was dressed, potentially? Because, you know, like, anyway. Marshar, I agree. The First Lady fed Princess Meghan to the wolves. So you feel like that. And so I don't want diaspora wars. I think Meghan dressed like people in California dress. And I'll say this, being in the Bay and having lived in the LA area for a long time, north of LA for a long time, the weather there is like where Meghan lives is pretty much 72. every day. If it gets down to 67, we're putting coats on. If it gets up to 78, we're burning up. And no humidity pretty much out here, just period, across the board. Even though the ocean is here, when we feel humid, she was hot. Like any small temperature fluctuation for people from California, we wear coats at night. And people who visit will say, well, dang, it's 70 degrees, it's 69 degrees, why are you wearing a coat? Because we're so used to such a range in temperature that when it deviates even slightly, our body feels that change, right? So it feels like what other people might feel a temperature drop of 20 degrees, 3 degrees, 5 degrees can feel like that for us. So I imagine that she was hot, and I know that she was intentionally wearing lots of Nigerian designers. So if we are in disagreement about, or if people are, should she have been shining a light on the designers? I think that's what she was trying to do with the red dress and other things in particular. The American let's see. The First Lady's statement was like straw in the wind. Wait, where'd it go? The First Lady's, hold on. The First Lady, where'd it go? Wait, hold on, guys. Her statement was wrong, blah, 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 the American podcasters. The First Lady, I know I saw straw in the wind. Guys, where did that go? My eyes are, like, playing tricks on me. Black podcasters are giving First Lady hell, but giving Princess Meghan grace for her dressing. Sorry for the misunderstanding. So Marvin, are you saying that you think that Meghan needed to get grace from American podcasters because she wore, American clothes? Or not American clothes, because she dressed like she would dress in California, that she should have been dressed, differently? Because here's a point that I'll make, right? Because you can accuse me of being an American podcaster giving her grace and trying to have a nuanced conversation. But if she went there and she started just automatically wearing what the aunties wear in Nigeria, she would have been accused of cultural appropriation, I think. And so when people started gifting her fashion, whether that was shade or not, if you will, and saying, hey, try this, and she's saying I should wear some color, she was going over there, in lots of us, and I'm guilty of this, that whole individualism thing. I am a community-minded person, but I also fiercely protect my individuality, maybe even to a fault in this space, because we have this thing where in this country, individuals and being yourself is valued and highly favored, right? And so I think she was going over there trying to be her best self, because that's who they asked to come. They didn't say, Meghan, come over here and do this, and it's not Saudi Arabia, if you will. So it was hot, and she was trying to do, and if it was offensive, I think unintentionally, and then when she started to hear whispers, she changed and conformed to the standard that lots of people. So wait, I missed something. I'm sorry, backside they're giving Princess Meghan. Okay. So that's my opinion. The black podcasters are giving the First Lady hell, but giving Princess Meghan grace for her dressing. Sorry. Oh, I read that. And that was my question. Like, the military invited them to show up the way they are. And anything she does, we understand she's going to be criticized. But do you think, I'm imagining you're a squatty, that she needed to be given grace? And are you feeling a kind of, Black American podcasters against Nigerians? Do you feel like I am expressing a kind of diaspora war impulse against the Nigerian First Lady? Okay, that's my question. Did anyone see the video of Princess Meghan on the Malta trip 2014? It was very well done and cleared up something about the Maltese connection. Duchess is a classy lady. Kathy Abbey says all of that. Marshar, well, if the First Lady mentioned Meghan's name, it was for clout. Well, I bet she didn't want this this kind. Nigeria needs good press that the games can bring because folks have a negative... Okay. No, not the squad podcasters that doesn't talk well of Princess Meghan. Yeah, because Marvin, they're going to bring that heat. Because anywhere that they find, I'm gonna say like roaches and rats, allegedly, BM is going to bring whatever filth allegedly they can, and like a rat or a mouse that can get in your house if you live in a whatever climate, if there's a tiny hole, they're going to try and dislodge and open up that hole and bring whatever amount of rats they can into the home to feed easily off of what else is there, right? And I think what's good about the squad is that I think, at least in this space, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I participated in some of that. I know I said I was hurt, right, by it. And I tried not to, but anyway, they're feeding off of her anyway. And it is, I think, part of our job as a squad to have a better understanding of what we mean, and to keep on working hard for the squad. Like, okay, if it's a misunderstanding, if it's intentional, how do we move beyond this, right? We're going to give you grace, and then maybe one time we'll ask you for grace. So this is a mutual space, and we're not going to get it right 100%, but if we get it right like 90%, 95%, and 5% of the time, not so much, what do we do with that? Let's see. Please don't knock or explain Princess Meghan's dressing in Nigeria. She was dressed just fine, says Karen. She was not on political state engagement where she had to follow protocol. Stop making her wrong. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that we need, I do think that the temperature in the U.S., especially where I am, it's a factor, right? And so, yeah, she was invited by the military. Arrington, yes, Kathy, Gabby, it was very well done. Loved her boldness in claiming the ancestor of her white side, and Malta being so celebratory of her heritage. Yeah, I saw, when I looked up something today, I looked at the Wikipedia page, and her father's name was the first one on the page. I'm like, dang, I understand. And at the same time, I'm like, dang, I felt a bit affronted that her ancestry started with him, and I know that that's tradition. And at the same time, it's like, okay, I think I saw LeBron James the same way, and I was sort of like, for Black Americans in particular, that's never been the rule, at least with respect to lineage. And that's been a problem, I guess, in our case. So I guess you can look at it a lot of different ways. But yeah, so here are his baseball statistics. If you want to, I'm going to go through this one more time. If you want to take a look, because I don't think everyone's seen all the slides. This is him. He's kind of cute, right? I think he's cute. I love his eyes. Looks like he could be one of my uncles. So, in his baseball, and like the H, I love the H on it. Happy, right? But he also played for the Homesteaders, so nicknamed Happy. And that's the cover of our, let's see. Keep going. All right, so this is just, members of the Negro Leagues, talking about that Major League Baseball has started to absorb the statistics of mostly Black American, the Negro League players. Not all Black Americans. Some of them came from other countries, too, to play in the Negro Leagues. Some of them passed and played in the so Jackie Robinson wasn't the first Black American to play in the leagues. There were a couple of men, I think, who passed as white because they just looked white. But he was the first one that acknowledged that he was African American. Let's see. The dresses that seem to have folks in their haterade are the pink one and the one with the palm leaves. So what, she looked nice and didn't have boobs and butt hanging out. Jealousy. And that one, the zebra one, or whichever one that was, it looked like kind of a zebra print, is the same one almost as that gold one that she wore. You guys remember that one? Kathy says, I'm appreciative of the explanations from the First Lady's reps pertaining to the clip that swept across the world, but I maintain that it was a clumsy statement given the wider context of the speech. Yeah, I think that a lot of us can hold those two things, and I think that we are starting to, at the same time, find our way, hopefully, back to a place. And now that we have had this kind of wound, and we see that we are different, we get told that we're not a monolith, And now we have that understanding, not that we didn't completely, right? But we have just different perspectives. And how do we move forward understanding that we're going to probably agree 98% of the time, but not 100% of the time, and we're going to hurt each other. And do we love each other? Do we love the squad and Meghan enough to move forward in a way where they can't exploit our differences? Because we know we've seen that happen all over the world, exploiting small differences in head size, nose sizes, lip sizes, and then being put into different tribes. Skin color, we had the paper bag test, all those things. So here's her auntie, Aunt Lillie, again. Aunt Lily's in the middle, next to her uncle, William Happy Evans, nicknamed Happy. So he didn't get that nickname out of nowhere. Probably just a wonderful person. And she's sitting there. And that purse, right? We haven't talked about that one. The purse that she's holding, like, she looked like she got a bag. Like, she the auntie. And who knows how much money is in that bag. I'm like, dang, auntie. I know she got, like, some money in there. He might have even said, here, hold this. Like, she holding the bag, literally. And she's out here being the first black manager in the real estate industry in California, and I think that's great. And he at this point, of course, is retired, sitting next to his wifey, right? And just having a day outside in the park, or having just a wonderful day outside. And looks like it's pretty sunny, and the sunlight looks a little bit harsh, but they look like they've had a decent day. Maybe the temperature was a few degrees warmer in LA that day. But yeah, I love the way she's holding her bag. Like, I got the bag, baby, literally and figuratively. And again, like, this is what people are up in arms about. And remember, Meghan's uncle Happy played in the same, like, with number 1 and number 3. Like, what? Or he played number 1, maybe. Which Satchel's number? It might be, I don't know. But anyway, Satchel is supposedly, like, he's the one who played until he was 59 for the Cleveland Indians, out here still winning stuff. And Josh Gibson's number 1. And Meghan's uncle played on the same team. So I would say, Jerron Coco, if he's in school, but he would say that Meghan's uncle is goated. He's goated, because how do you play with, like, OGs and G's, like, in their sport, the greatest and in the sport? And why would they want her uncle Happy to be on the team if he wasn't goated, right? If he wasn't a great baseball player like a Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson again. I love, like, I've been goating Josh Gibson for a long time. I guess Satchel might be number 2. I can't see under this picture. So I've been goating Josh Gibson and talking about if he had been able to play, like, what he would have done. And now we get to see his numbers, just period, inside of MLB. And I think, because we know, like, again, Jackie Robinson, when he came, he dominated. And he wasn't even, maybe he was in the top 10. I'm not even sure if he was. But these players were, like, the best of the best at what they did, bar none. Because how else could, again, Satchel Paige play until 60? And Uncle Happy played with these men directly on the same Homesteaders team. And so when you're around great people, you learn what they do, and they up your game. But again, they wouldn't want you probably on the team if you are not, like, up to speed. They would have gotten somebody else, somebody better. Again, here's what his baseball card would have looked like for the Homestead. Bill Happy Evans, with the explanation on the back. And that's his Wikipedia page right there, with him in the baseball cap. And I showed you the team. Let's go back to that really quickly, with his picture encircled. There we are with his manager. They look like they're ready to play, right? And so this is before integration, if you will, of baseball. So again, if you have a minute, check out Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars. If you see some vendor selling Negro League things, we can, like, maybe buy a t-shirt or one of the baseball shirts. Let's see here. Satchel Paige, he might have been, he's in his 50s at this point, but I know he played for the Indians when he was 59, which I think is, like, amazing. And then Nick Wright, one of my favorite sports journalists, talking about people being up in their feelings around the Negro League players finally getting the recognition. Like, anybody who played the sport, they understand what, what these players did for the game. They would, like, Babe Ruth, there's an urban legend that Babe Ruth is black. That's a real urban legend, right? Like, that's not even allegedly. That's just what he hung out with, a lot of black people, Babe Ruth, and got accused. He was like a dark-skinned Italian, too. But he would play with people, and so, like, was always hanging out with black folk. And so people in his own community even started accusing him of being black American, so it's kind of funny. But, yeah, he learned and played with them, too, not in an official capacity. And you'd also have, like, unofficial games that were not on the record books by, teams like the Kansas City Monarchs and the Black Sox and these teams playing exposition games, but that those games didn't count. So it will be interesting to see what those statistics look like in the future. Like, will they count those exhibition games or what? Because I know that I don't want to give away Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars, but it was a really, really cool old movie. Probably, I would imagine it was in the 70s or 80s that movie, but Billy D. Williams again, James Earl Jones, and is also in that one, so check that out. I'll say it this way, if I can. That's Darth Vader. Should I just take it off? Okay, that's Darth Vader for those who are unordained to James Earl Jones's actual, government name, if you will. And already they've gotten her uncle's statistics up on the Major League Baseball site, so that was really cool to see. And here he is again. So, as we close today's episode, let me read a couple more comments and then we'll get ready to head out. Let's see. I'm appreciative. Wait, did I read that one? The dresses that seem to have... Okay, yep. I'm appreciative of the explanation from the First Lady. Yep. Yes, the one like the gold. Yes, actually. Absolutely. LOL Marshar, you were the most wonderful warrior. Isn't she, though? The homie. the homie princess. And also Entendre, the homie princess. Entendre intended, right? Shout out to Kendrick for doing all those entendres. Let's see. Yes, Princess Meghan is always elegant, beautiful, and classy. Kathy Gabby, that hanging question was rife for misinterpretation and twisting. Like BM, right, Kathy? Am I being too much of a 7th grader today? Yeah, that BM was right. I think you're absolutely right. Oh, what? Oh, my. Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, my. Breaking news, Trump found guilty on all counts. Ooh, that's not what we podcast about. I kept checking the news, didn't see. Oh, wow. Mary's hitting on it. Where were you when you learned that? Oh, my. What? Wait, hold on. Wait, let me see. Where is it? That sounds like Little John to me, if you guys heard that. Are you serious? That's wild. So now what happens as a result of this? It's definitely going to be appealed, right? There's going to be yeah, so, whoa. So anyway, I really enjoyed this episode today, family. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm glad that we were able to have a conversation around, what happened in this space over the last week. And I think that we started to have a repair. And hopefully we'll get back to our baseline and hopefully we'll be better for it, if you will. I wrote a poem and I don't know where I put it, so I'll have to read it next time. So I want to thank, I don't know if any of the mods are here, Callie Jen, and so haven't seen Lydia today. She does a lot in a lot of spaces. So shout out to the mods, shout out to you guys. I won't even comment on what has happened in our space. Well, no, I'm going to say, like, shout out to the universe, because it's been decent, right? You know, in the beginning it was like not so much with all the, you know, not all the, but there were some definitely people. And please like this, guys, if you can, just some of you like, I get so many, that is a little bit like, when I look at all the dislikes, it's like, oh, I hate that, or I don't like that, like, that energy. I get so many people who are just BM, likely supporters of BM, who like to see it, hear it, smell it, the BM that comes from the reporters, right? So they just dislike, and it just feels, sometimes it feels a little bit disheartening. And I'm like, really? Maybe I'm just a little bit sensitive. So if you liked any part of the podcast, do that. If you want to support the podcast, watch prior episodes, listen to prior episodes, do that. That's what you can do. You can like the episodes I don't want you liking it if you don't like it, right? But if you liked it, if you got something from it, do that. If you didn't like it, put a comment out there and let me know what I can do to make the podcast better for everyone. I know I've been podcasting earlier in the day lately. So yeah, there's that. So do that. Let's just be kind to each other. Make sure you take care of yourself. Shout out to all of you. You're superstars. I really love the energy that you bring to this space in particular. And when I have a chance to go to other spaces, I love seeing your names up there as well, because we love the squad, right? So yeah, if you want to support the channel, you can support it by listening to other content. That's number one. We did start memberships. I don't know if they've fixed whatever on the front page. They're all different prices. I think I did it right. So if you want to, I think the cheapest one is, I don't know if it's $3.99 or $4.99. I tried to follow whatever the precedent was. If I have that wrong, let me know, and I'll be able to try to make an adjustment. Because again, like, it would be nice to have some different, better equipment. And yeah, I really am here for you guys, and as you guys are here for me, and I really appreciate it. And as we go forth to do this work, you know, do some homework. I think we're getting a little bit better. Go on some sites and do some correcting, give some shout outs if you're feeling better than, you know, like a few days ago. Do some of the homework that the Duchess deserves to have done if you are in a space in your head where you can. Let's see, ending on a, oh my God, joy about Trump. We all knew it. Leave it to New Yorkers to tell the truth. Right, the legal system. The Proud Boys are on standby. Ooh, so buckle up for the rough ride ahead. I think the Supreme Court is also on standby. We have a BM over here too. I just like to thank you, Mary, for liking the video. I know sometimes it's like, oh, I forgot to do that. I am Meghan Markle, and still I rise. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Karen says that particular channel was really out of line. It wasn't for what we are here for, which is the Sussexes. Okay, thank you for saying that, Karen. Orange is like the FL saying he didn't do. Did you ever? Oh gosh, remember Doja Cat didn't do nothing? Oh gosh, damn! That just like triggered me when she was starting. Poor thing. I think she's a little better, but I'm not sure. Take care of us. Take care of squatties. Be vigilant. The MAGA will be madder and more unhinged, like the yeah. So do some, like, look him up. You know, he looks like an old professor that I had. He looks also like one of my mother's brothers. He looks like he probably was a nice guy. Got super thin in his older years, and his wife Lillie looks like she was a G. So anyway, love you guys. Hopefully I see you guys out there in those Sussex streets, and you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget to take care of yourself. I'm gonna put so there we are. What happened? I don't know. Oh no, did I do something wrong? Anyway, take care, guys. Bye-bye.